This is a special edition of PFT PM, technically the second one today, because right after PFT Live ended, we had to do a little video on the Browns' decision to move on from Coach Kevin Stefanski. Well, that was one that was widely expected. We mentioned it on Football Night in America before the Ravens-Steelers game. The other name that everyone expected to be on the outs, Pete Carroll. As expected, out after 1 year with head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. They had to do something. It was not sustainable. The season was a complete and total disaster. And someone, and we'll assume that Pete Carroll was at least one of the someones, grossly misevaluated the Raiders roster. They thought they were going to be better than they were, as evidenced by the fact that they saw fit to bring in a veteran quarterback, Geno Smith, who would presumably be plugged in to make the team take off and compete in a top-heavy, except for what happened with the Chiefs, AFC West. The decision to use a top 10 pick on running back Ashton Genty, that's an icing on the cake move. They didn't have the cake. You don't build a team from the outside in. You have to build it from the inside out. You bring in Genty when you think you have everything else in place. They had nothing else in place but for Max Crosby, whom they've alienated, and Brock Bowers, who they possibly are in the process of alienating based upon what they do moving forward. So Carroll absolutely had to go. He had to. The question is, what else will they do? Will John Spytek, the GM, be safe? Currently he is. He goes back to Tampa, and really prior to that, with Tom Brady. They've known each other for a long time. And I think folks in the building have done a pretty good job of blaming the disaster of 2025 on Pete Carroll. But now it's time to move forward. And Tom Brady has managed, I think by virtue of the fact that he wears so many different hats, or as the case may be, gloves or glove, he doesn't get the criticism he should. He was brought in to stabilize the organization. Owner Mark Davis said so himself. Brady got a slice of the team at a below market rate, in part because Davis is buying Tom's expertise. Remember last year, the Las Vegas Review-Journal reported that this is Tom's show now. That was a year ago. If it was really a show, it would be canceled. It was a mess, and Brady somehow has avoided the blame for it. Not many. I know I'm one of them, and I'm sorry. We have to call it like we see it. This is partially Brady's fault. He's the one who's pressing buttons, and he's the one who's choosing not to go all in. I've said for weeks now, Brady's got to go all in or all out. You can't do this job halfway. We'll see how much time he spends on it going forward. He's still got 3 more weeks of his primary job at $37.5 million per year as the #1 game analyst at Fox. They'll have a wild card game. They'll have a division round game. They'll have a conference championship game. And then he can give his full focus to the team. How much of his full focus will they get? And what will he want to do? There is a rumor making the rounds. I wrote about this yesterday. And look, you either want hard news or you want to have an idea of where the ball may be going. People get upset when they get something that isn't complete and ready and 100%. Well, I'm telling you what I'm hearing from people I've known for years and that I trust. I've been doing this 25 years. I'm plugged into some of these circles where things are happening. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but a possible Patriot Way reunion makes a ton of sense if it would happen. Brian Flores is head coach. Brian Daboll is offensive coordinator. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I am saying that there's talk around the league of it possibly going down. And when you think about it, the most obvious choice to get the band back together in Las Vegas would be Josh McDaniels as head coach. But been there, done that. It's unfortunate they already did that, or McDaniels would get his opportunity now. Not that it would go any better, but he would be the guy that Tom Brady would be looking at. So Belichick clearly isn't going to be an option, even though they say all the right things. That relationship is broken beyond repair, I believe, between Brady and Belichick. So Flores or Daboll, either one. But Flores is the head coach. Daboll is the offensive coordinator. I guess in theory, Daboll is the head coach. Flores is the defensive coordinator because he's a free agent, even though his contract may not have expired upon the completion of the final game in Minnesota. There's no more work to be done. It's just a question of where he's going to be next year. So keep an eye on that as a possibility. Whatever they do, though, Tom Brady has to take ownership of this because he literally has ownership of the team, and the owner has made it clear that Tom Brady has stepped into the spot that John Gruden used to occupy. Davis said it last year. See, we can reside in a world of facts or we can reside in a world of appearances. Brady has created the appearance that he's just kind of a part-time drive-by, don't blame me. Now, if they were doing well, he'd be front and center. He'd be wearing that white Raiders jumpsuit everywhere he goes if the Raiders were the number 1 seed in the AFC. But since they stink, nope. Now, he never says it. It's just the appearance he creates. And we know how important appearances are. Think back to the Monday night game against the Chargers. They show Brady on the screen, sitting in the booth with the tablet, with the headset. He hits the button, he slides down, doesn't want to be noticed there. Whether that's because it crystallized the previously underestimated significance of the conflict of interest that he has, or maybe he just doesn't want to be associated as closely with the Raiders while they stink as he should be. But the bottom line is, this is his show. Whatever happens next is on him, because what happened last year is on him. Few may be willing to say it. I'll say it. The mess of 2025 is on him. Pete Carroll can be fired. An owner cannot be fired. Brady is the one who's got to fix this. We'll see what Brady does next. We'll see what Carroll does next. It's probably the end of the road. Some were surprised he got the opportunity to come back. I fully supported it, but we had to understand what it was. This wasn't a quick fix. Why did anyone think the Raiders were going to be good? They just get in a room together and they get themselves all excited and they gloss over the various flaws in the roster and they think they can rah-rah their way through it. Now, that's on Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll wasn't as objective about the team as he should have been. No one was as objective about the team as they should have been. I didn't expect them to be the worst team in football, and frankly, they've had competition over the last 5 weeks from the Jets. But the Raiders were a mess. Removing Pete Carroll is the easy part. The harder part is fixing whatever is wrong with the Raiders, because you've still got the Broncos, you've still got the Chargers, and the Chiefs are not going to be gone for very long. It wasn't all that long ago in the grand scheme of things that Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson were together in Seattle. Russell Wilson moved on to the Broncos. It didn't work out. After 2 seasons, he moved on to the Steelers. It didn't work out. Remember last year, Steelers owner Art Rooney II said, well, we want to bring back Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. And then Justin Fields signs with the Jets, and Russell Wilson's name was never mentioned again. He landed with the Giants. He started the early part of the season. And then he ended up on the bench for Jackson Dart. And then he ended up at number 3 on the depth chart behind Jameis Winston. Now, on Monday, on the traditional locker clean-out day, when players show up and they have one last appearance with the media, Wilson was asked if he's going to keep playing. And he said, I'm not blinking. Well, he should have stopped there. Because Wilson started down this path of admitting that he suffered a grade 2 hamstring tear on the final play of practice on the Friday before the Week 2 game against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, that was a long time ago. Many games have been played since then. News cycles come and go. There's something new every single day. But when you go back and look at the injury report from Week 2, he's not on there. When you do a search for any update that may have been issued by the Giants, because updates come out all the time, it's impossible to keep them all straight months after the fact, I couldn't find an update from the Giants that Russell Wilson had a hamstring injury going into that Week 2 game. And he had a really good game. 450 passing yards, 40-37 overtime loss by the Giants. The best we've seen Russell Wilson play since he left the Seahawks. And I don't know whether he's trying to build himself up into this Willis Reed type of a performance. I mean, I guess it's possible in theory he's lying about the hamstring injury. I guess that's possible. It's possible. I'm not saying he is. Don't sue me. I'm saying it's possible. But given what happened after Week 2 for the NBA, with the gambling scandal, with the misuse of inside information becoming a clear problem in American sports, the league can't just look the other way. The league can't say, well, that's water under the bridge. The league is going to have to investigate this. And the questions are going to be pretty clear. Number one, did Russell Wilson just keep this a secret from everyone? Did he not tell the Giants? Did he tell the Giants, and did the Giants not tell anyone? And the key here will be Wilson said he went to the Dallas Mavericks training facility to get treatment. How did he set that up? Did the Giants know about it? Somebody at the Mavericks knew about it. Not that the NFL has any jurisdiction over the Dallas Mavericks. I wonder if this gets I hadn't thought of this. Does it get the Mavericks in trouble with the NBA for participating in this effort to keep a professional athlete's injury secret? There's a lot of tentacles here. And it may, again, just be Russell Wilson puffing to make it look like he still has it. Hey, I went out there with a grade 2 hamstring tear and I tore it up. Imagine what I could do if I was healthy. But I think the practical result, no matter what happens, if the league investigates, if they don't, I think they will. I think they have to. Again, in this age of legalized, normalized, and monetized gambling from which the league handsomely profits, they can't look the other way on something like this. It was 2009 that Brett Favre, after he joined the Vikings, was talking about an undisclosed injury he suffered down the stretch with the Jets. Remember, the Jets were in great position, and then all of a sudden it fell apart. Well, why did it fall apart, Brett? Why did you not play well? Well, I had a partially torn biceps tendon. And he kept talking about that in Minnesota to the point where the league had to go back months after the fact, investigate, and issue multiple fines. The league's not going to ignore this just because it happened back in week 2. The end result will be, I believe, it's going to be even harder for Russell Wilson to find a job in 2026. Who's going to want to sign him? Beyond the fact that it looks like his best days are behind him, beyond the fact that he may not be an ideal backup because he's going to go in there with this extreme confidence that he can play. You know, if you're going to be a backup, you got to be, most backups, you got to be willing to support the starter. Sometimes they bring in a backup with the idea he's going to push the starter and maybe, if he performs better, play in the games. Wilson's going to want to be that kind of backup. Wilson's going to want to be the starter. But if I can't be the starter, let me be the backup. Let me compete to be the starter. I'll prove it to you that I can be the starter. I'll play with a grade 2 hamstring tear if I have to. I just think that on the merits of his current abilities, it's going to be a challenge. You throw in the fact that on his way out the door, he throws the team under the bus and creates this mess that they don't want. They got a coaching search going on. They don't want to have to deal with an NFL investigation about Russell Wilson's previously hidden grade 2 hamstring tear. This is going to make Wilson less attractive to other teams. They're not going to want to bring in a guy who may just blow everything up on his way out the door. And he did it with a smile on his face. And he'll say, I didn't know I was causing any problems. Well, you should have known. You should have known what saying what you said was going to do potentially to the Giants, because it's going to do it. And if it doesn't, something's wrong, at least from the standpoint of an investigation. We'll find out based upon the investigation what the results are and what the league decides to do. But I think it makes the league at large less likely to do any business with Russell Wilson going forward. The Giants also had a question that many were hoping would get resolved a different way as to whether or not Joe Schoen would continue as the general manager. Remember, when they fired Brian Daboll, Schoen stayed. Schoen is leading the search for a new head coach. As the team continued to struggle, there was more and more consternation expressed as to whether or not they should just clean house. No half measures. Let's just start over again. A statement was issued on Monday making it clear that that's not the case. Schoen will remain as the general manager. So all of that talk can end. No vigils this week, no waiting for white smoke to see whether or not Schoen would be fired. He's staying, he's hiring the coach, and we'll go forward. And obviously that's going to be a story that continues to develop until they have their next coach. But it's going to be Schoen picking the coach, which will take some coaches out of the mix. Schoen's not going to hire a coach who would say, I should run the show here, not Joe Schoen, or I don't want to work with Joe Schoen, but I'd like to be the coach of the Giants. Now let me get to work on getting Schoen fired next. So it's going to be the coach Schoen wants. Whether or not it's the best coach for the Giants is going to be a different issue. The guy who, and I'm not criticizing Schoen here, who in their right mind would search for an employee whose agenda would include getting rid of the person who hired that employee? No one in the right mind is going to do that. So Schoen goes forward as the GM looking for a coach. In Cincinnati, neither position will be filled. Duke Tobin is kind of the GM doesn't really have the title of GM, but he's the guy who's setting the table. Zach Taylor's the guy who's coaching the team. The Bengals issued a statement on Monday that both will be back. Now, in a normally functioning organization, you don't have to issue a statement that both will be back. You just come back. Everybody's back. The Colts did it Sunday, I know, but that's kind of a different situation because it's a new owner. Nobody knows what Carly Gordon was going to want to do. So I won't call the Colts dysfunctional for issuing the statement as soon as the season ended that, yeah, hey, let there be no misunderstanding. Ballard and Steichen are back. It's different for the Bengals. And it just shows that, other teams might not have the same faith in Tobin and Taylor. And we know what the deal is in Cincinnati. The snow-covered seats from a few weeks ago say it all. It's a business. We talked about this on PFT Live when we were addressing the likelihood that Taylor would be back. If you fire Zach Taylor, you got to pay him what you owe him. And you got to pay someone else to come coach the team. And all of that eats into the profits. Right? Salary cap dollars, there's a certain amount of your money that you have to spend on players. Everything else is profit based upon the extent to which you can minimize expenses. The less you pay to the coaches, the more profit you make. The less you pay in buyouts, the more profit you make. That's the one thing that Mike Brown and Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys, have in common. They won't pay coaches to not coach. When coaching changes are made in Dallas, it's always when the contract expires, or at a minimum, when the guaranteed money expires. I've said for weeks that's the key question for Zach Taylor, not how long the contract lasts, how long the contract is guaranteed for. When Marvin Lewis was fired after the 2018 season, he had a year left on his contract. That year wasn't guaranteed. So we knew what was going to happen in Cincinnati. If there's any guarantees left on those contracts, the employees are staying. Now, what that means for Joe Burrow, we'll see, because he's been saying something needs to change. Their challenge this year is going to be to make the right kind of changes that will make Joe Burrow feel the same way next year. He's entering year 7. For Carson Palmer, it took 8 years for him to come to the conclusion, I can't win here. This organization prioritizes making money over pursuing championships. And that was it for Carson Palmer. Joe Burrow may be getting closer to that point. And I also believe, based upon all the things that have been said, someone will call the Bengals and inquire as to whether or not Burrow is available. Now, before the draft in 2020, the Dolphins tried to get the rights to Joe Burrow, and the Bengals consistently hung up the phone. We don't know what they'll do now. There's no reason to think they won't hang up the phone. But maybe somebody makes them an offer they can't refuse. Or maybe they see what's coming. Maybe they see, you know what? We're getting closer and closer to the point where Joe Burrow's had enough. Maybe we sell high. Maybe we move on from Joe Burrow now. I mean, Joe Flacco wasn't a disaster when he was replacing Joe Burrow. Maybe they can convince themselves that they could be okay with someone else. That's a risky proposition. And maybe they just like a break from this constant stress of trying to keep Joe Burrow happy. You get to a point where it just kind of weighs you down as an organization to tiptoe around the franchise quarterback who is, constantly hitting directly or indirectly at the idea of, if you don't do what I want you to do, I may want out. Maybe at some point you say, let's move him out. Let's not have to worry about that anymore. Those are all things to monitor as the offseason unfolds. You got 2 teams with franchise quarterbacks in the AFC North, the Ravens and the Bengals, where the phone calls will be made. And I think it's far more likely that a team would take on Burrow and his contract than Lamar Jackson and his contract. Either team would need a lot by way of a trade offer to get them to make the move. But these are all things that will potentially unfold now that we get into the offseason for the 18 teams that didn't make it. I have a feeling I'll be back at some point today. It's great that I was in Pittsburgh. I was home by 11 o'clock, so I'm here. If the bat signal goes off, the PFT PM bat signal, we can do another one or more today or tomorrow, whenever and however, as the inevitable developments of the offseason unfold. We'll have everything fully updated at profootballtalk.com. We'll see you bright and early on Tuesday morning for PFT Live. Thanks, as always, for some of your time, and we'll see you next time. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.